Well, joining us today for 4029 News on the Record is Kelly Kraut. She is the sole candidate for Lieutenant Governor on the Democratic side. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today from Lowell. Introduce yourself to our viewers.
Hey, thank you for having me. Good morning. My husband and I grew up in Russellville in Central Arkansas and have been in Northwest Arkansas for the past 17 or 18 years. Started our family here. We do have 7 children, which I know is a lot of children, but it has made me extremely efficient. We spent about 10 years off and on fostering here in the area, which gave me a really close up view of how a lot of families in our area are struggling and swimming upstream, and they deserve dignity, guidance, and grace. And we just wanted to do what we could do to serve in that capacity. After fostering for a while, we adopted a few kids, as you may have guessed, and ran out of space. And I still wanted to help that community. So I wrote a few children's books that help explain the foster care and adoption process in a way that kids can understand, and families can use that to kind of help navigate with their children as they're walking through the process. After that, I decided to go back to school and finish my social work master's degree. So that's what I'm wrapping up this semester, actually. So every day I am learning about the needs in our community and literally on the ground helping the most vulnerable in our area try to get connected to services and resources that they need. And I just see over and over again that a lot of our Kansans are struggling and not getting quite what they need. So studying social work prompted a passion for policy, which is what landed me running for office.
What are some of the changes do you think our state needs to better serve that community?
Absolutely. There are, I could go on all day about this. Probably you're talking to the social work student. We just have so many systems that are really clunky and difficult to navigate. I talk about foster care a lot on my platform. It's an overworked system. DHS is understaffed, and I think they're doing the best they can with what they've got, but they don't have the resources that they need to be able to serve these families in a way that allows them to be successful when DHS is no longer involved in the process. I see daily people who need emergency housing, and we just don't have a lot of options for that need addiction treatment services. Those are not easy to come by, certainly not quickly. Mental health issues. We just have a bunch of problems where people are getting left behind. So we need to clean up some of these systems, make them more easy to navigate and better accessible for everyone.
Now, what makes you the best qualified to help run the state of Arkansas?
Well, I think I have a different perspective, having served as a foster parent, being in the social work sphere and learning about the resources that our community has and the resources that our community does not have. I bring fresh, creative ideas to the campaign. I've got a lot of energy. I'm a hard worker. I'm doing this a little bit different than a lot of other people are doing it, but we don't have to always do things the same way. And maybe it's time to give a fresh face.
The current governor currently wants to raise the budget. So what are your thoughts on the state of Arkansas's economy right now and how you would handle the budget?
We always need to be good stewards of our resources. We talk about that a lot on the campaign trail as well. So obviously we need to be spending less than what we're bringing in. I love that we have a surplus. I think I see the value in a rainy day fund. I also see that here in Arkansas, it's a rainy day right now. We have people who are struggling. We're in the middle of this mess of a pandemic, and there are a lot of ways that we could use some of that money to help Arkansans, help keep Arkansas families and children safe. You know what is really great for the economy? People who are well enough to work and shop and run businesses. And that is where we could see some massive improvement. I think if we could do a better job with COVID, we would see a lot of other things do better as well.
Okay, well, we're going to be back with Kelly Kraut in 2 minutes to talk about COVID and some other issues impacting us here in Arkansas. Kelly Kraut, the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor, thanks for joining us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to 4029 News. On the record, today we have Kelly Kraut, the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor in 2022. Let's talk about COVID-19, since that's where we stopped. We have seen multiple variants come through. We have seen it get better, get worse. When do you think it's appropriate to mandate vaccinations?
It's been a mess, hasn't it? I know it's a hard time for everyone. As far as when it's appropriate to mandate vaccines, I would say when our health professionals say that it is. I wish we were deferring to health professionals instead of politicians for medical advice. That seems like a no-brainer to me. But here in Arkansas, our Arkansan pediatricians, our doctors here who are serving our children, our families, they're suggesting that we get vaccinated. Of course, I would rather that people just get vaccinated, but sometimes when you're in the middle of a public health crisis, we have to have laws and regulations to keep Arkansas families and children safe.
What about when it comes to mask mandates? Should it be the state or should it be like the local school districts or the local city council?
Absolutely, the local school boards, I believe, because we've got to be able to adjust for different communities and the spread in that community, what the schools look like, how new your school is, how good is the ventilation system, what are the cases like in your area. Now, I think we could safely say pretty much everywhere in Arkansas right now ought to be wearing a mask. The schools are struggling right now. My fifth grader has about 10 kids in his class every day. That's usually 20 to 22. Their kids are getting left behind one way or another, whether they're in school or they're not, because they can't be doing the same kind of curriculum with half of the students out sick or quarantined. So we've seen the schools that are masking have about a 25% less rate of COVID. We know it's not perfect. We also know that some masks are better than others. So, hey, again, let's use that surplus and let's provide schools with what they need to keep their teachers and their students safe.
Well, when it comes to social issues, your opponents have been debating who is the most conservative. What do you believe are the top two social issues impacting us here in Arkansas right now?
Oh, it would be hard for me to just do two as a social work student. But, I just see that so many families are struggling and getting left behind. I'm really passionate about the foster care system. I think that we could do a lot to prevent entry into the foster care system in the first place if we would have some of these resources more easily accessible on the front side. We've got infrastructure issues that make it difficult to access some of these services. And like I've mentioned before, a bunch of these systems are just very clunky and hard to navigate. Education, again, is a huge, huge issue right now because our children and teachers are not able to accomplish what they need in the classroom. So we could go on and on all day about social issues, I think, because there are just so many. We've got people struggling with homelessness and addiction and mental health issues, and people are just having a hard time. Meanwhile, it seems the legislature's main focus seems to be intervening in private decisions between pregnant people and their doctors. And we can do better to help way more Arkansans than that.
Do you think the Arkansas law needs to change when it comes to abortion?
I believe that abortion needs to be safe and accessible. Yes.
And what about trans rights? We saw that last legislature session where they talked a lot about trans rights and taking a lot of rights away from kids who are 18 and under. What do you think about those decisions?
Yes, I think the legislature needs to stay out of it. Those are very deeply personal decisions between parents and their children and their doctors who know a whole lot more about this than most of us do. I do believe that a lot of people simply misunderstand what gender affirming healthcare looks like. They tend to assume that really young children are getting surgeries and things, and that's not the kind of thing that's happening. Get to know some families who have a trans child, get to know somebody who is trans in your life, and maybe learn a little bit about the process. Things like puberty blockers are not permanent issues. It simply is a pause on puberty to allow a little bit more time to make some important decisions. As a parent, I would want my child to feel comfortable in their body, and I really wouldn't want the legislature snooping around in our appointments trying to make decisions that are between me, my child, and a doctor.
When it comes to education in Arkansas, where do you see us lacking most, and what does the state need to do about it?
Well, we are 41st in education, I believe. We're struggling. And I think a big part of it is our teachers don't have what they need to be able to do their jobs well. They have always had way too much to do. and not enough time to do it. They need more support. So again, we could use some of that surplus for support staff. I grew up in the public school system. My mom was a public school teacher my whole childhood. And I watched for years and years of her putting hours that were outside of the classroom into serving her students, particularly socially, financially, academically, vulnerable students. And she's not super unique. Most teachers do that. Most teachers are looking out for kids inside and outside of the classroom. And they've always not had enough time to do that. And now in the middle of a pandemic, we're asking them to also provide all these lesson plans ahead of time when the legislature is getting involved. We're asking them to teach remotely and try to deal with, what do I do with my class when only half of them are here and the rest of them are going to be out the rest of the week? Like, they just need more support. It wouldn't hurt to pay them more. I'm sure nobody would turn that down either.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Kelly Kraut, the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor in 2022. Thanks for joining us.